Good day. I want to talk to you this time about a subject, Mystery Babylon. Now we're going to go into the 17th and 18th chapter in the book of Revelation, and as John is in heaven in the Spirit, listening to this and writing it down, there is an angel that is talking to John and explaining what all of this stuff means. Now, we've already read in chapter 16 and 17 who the Antichrist really is. He's the first beast that come out of the bottomless pit. And it doesn't designate a name for the man other than he's a worker of Satan. He's brought out, it's an evil spirit brought out by Satan, and he will occupy an earthly man body. He'll be there for 3.5 years, and then he'll be made known unto the world. But until then, you're just going to have to watch, because the Bible doesn't give a name for him. It just says who he is. And he's the first beast that comes out of the bottomless pit. He has a head wound of some sort that kills him. And then he comes back to life as the second beast is brought from the bottomless pit. And that beast becomes the false prophet. He is the one that goes around to convince everybody that that's the way of life you should go. And I got news for you. There's going to be a lot of people on this earth that's going to fall for that and believe everything that that guy's saying. You accept that system, and you have automatically accepted the name of the beast. You pay attention to what these scriptures are saying and how this angel is interpreted it to John. As we get started, please bear with me. Revelation 17:5. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and an abomination of the earth. The vision of the prostitute, which is the one woman we just talked about. Chapter 17 is built upon the vision of a woman, a prostitute, who seems to symbolize the same thing that Babylon symbolizes in chapter 16, verse 19. Civilization convinced it doesn't need God. That explains a lot right there of who the beast is. They're convinced they don't need God. This prostitute revealed to John in verse 1 and 2 is the leader of the immorality of the world. She leads the kings to commit acts of immorality and causes the people of the world to be led astray. The description sits on many waters. It's the same used by the prophet Jeremiah, set up in the Old Testament city of Babylon. Jeremiah 51 and 13 as Revelation 17 and 18 play out. The image of this woman is identified with Babylon in many ways. The people who are living outside of God's law are simply referred to as a prostitute. They were never in a relationship with God, so they were not forsaking that relationship. Verse 16, 17, and the seventh angel poured out his vial unto the air, and there came a great voice out of the temple of heaven from the throne, saying, It is done. This is the last bowl judgment. Saints are not here, only Satan, his followers, and unsaved whose name is not written in the book of life. That's what you have to worry about. Get your name in that book, or you're going to be forever lost. Revelation 17, 7 through 11. And the angel said unto me, John, Wherefore didst thou marvel? I will tell thee the mystery of the woman, and the beast that carrieth her, which has the 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast thou sawest was, and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit, and go into perdition. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was, and is not, and yet is. And they are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, and 1 is, and the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. And the beast that was, and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7, and goeth into perdition. And I saw a woman. Both the scripture and other writings frequently represent a city under this emblem. This is not a single nation like America, Russia, China, but sin itself. The beast which is made up from sin, Satan himself. In verse 3, after having the prostitute described to John, to him, John sees her for herself. After being carried away, he sees the woman on a scarlet beast. This is presumably the same beast described in 13 and 1, with the 7 heads and the 10 horns, and labeled with blasphemous names. The woman is dressed in purple and scarlet, the colors of royalty. 17 and 4. She is glittering with her accessories of gold, pearl, and precious stones. Many interpret this description, particularly the royal colors, to mean that the prostitute symbolizes a kingdom. She holds a golden cup, but inside the cup are immoral, disgusting things. There is a title written on her forehead. This is one of several times in Revelation that people are identified by their mark or seal on their foreheads. Chapter 7, 3, chapter 9, 4, chapter 14, 1. Rather than understanding her name as being mystery, her name was a mystery. More exclamation is given later in this chapter when an angel explains some of the symbolism to John 17, 15, and 18. The next thing written on her forehead is Babylon, a city that has already been mentioned several times in Revelation. In this case, the name Babylon is not used to identify a place, but more to identify a godless culture. It is clear, though, not only is the woman or woman she represents evil herself, but she births evil. Identified as the mother of all prostitutes, she represents the source of all of immorality in the world. In addition, she is the source of all the evil that seeks to desecrate God. And as verse 6 states, she clearly opposes the children of God as well. Verse 6 draws an even more vivid description. The woman is drunk with the blood of the saints, which implies that she is responsible for their deaths. The language here is not that of something done long ago, but rather something that is still continuing. She enjoys the destruction of that which she has partaken. And John is amazed at what he sees. The angel offers some exclamation of the scene that has astonished John, 17:7. While John has described the woman predominantly in the vision, the angel reveals that it is the beast identified by the heads and the horns that seems more prominent several times in the angel's exclamation. The beast is described with some variation as the one who was now and is not and will come. 17:8. This is a way of saying that he has been resurrected, but it is a false resurrection. It is probably meant to stand in contrast to the description of Jesus in Revelation 1:4. Grace and peace to you from him who is, and who was, and who is to come. The beast lived, died, and is going to come back to life, a sign of false divinity. But in the end, this coming back serves the purpose of his final destruction. Just as in 13:18, when the number for the beast is cited, the angel states that in the mind that grasps the exclamation of this vision requires wisdom. 13:18, 17:9. Lest we think these should be simple concepts, they are not. They are truths that require a lot of understanding. According to the angel, the 7 heads on the beast are 7 mountains on which the woman sits, as well as 7 kings. For some contemporary interpreters, this means that the head of the beast represents several nations or emperors that this woman controls. To others, this is an obvious reference to Rome, which was often described as a city of 7 hills. Certainly, in the days of John, Rome would have fit much of this description of Babylon given in this book. In verse 10 mentions the 7 kings, 5 of which have fallen. These who see the heads of the beast as a nation interpret this verse as a reference to 5 kingdoms who have stood against Israel but no longer is in control. For those who see the heads of the beast as the rulers, these verses reference emperors or perhaps empresses. They will appear as men. Others offer the option that the number 7 may, as it has before, represent completion rather than a specific nation, ruler, or kingdom. It could denote all that has stood against God. In verse 11 we read that there will actually be one more to rule, whether interpreted or a ruler, a nation, or a symbol or evil. This 8th king refers to the beast himself. Somehow he belongs to the 7, yet rules again. The angel's interest in this exclamation, though, doesn't seem to be identifying the beast in a definite way or explaining the symbolism without question. The focus seems to be that this beast is on his way to destruction at the hand of God. Next, the angel begins to explain the horn, 17, 12, and 14. The 10 horns represent 10 kingdoms as a confederacy that will rule with the beast for a definite time. A quick, short period of time. They will be completely united with the beast in opposition to the Lamb, but they will be defeated. Jesus is described as Lord of Lords, King of Kings, a name similar to that which describes God in Deuteronomy 10 and 17. We will be accompanied by His chosen and faithful followers. This is not to be understood as His army. The Lamb needs no army to defeat evil. Rather, it is the family of those He has redeemed. In the exclamation, the angel reveals that the waters on which the prostitute sits represents the influence she has over the entire world. Many believe this is a description of a world religion. For the first time, the entire world will share a common belief system. Others see it as a description of an immeasurable large empire. 17:5. In either interpretation, the main player turns each other. The beast with his army first shames the prostitute and then destroys her. 17:16. This is a picture of the nature of evil and of sovereignty of God. Evil nature is in turn even on its own. God's sovereignty is such that His will is done even by those who defy Him. God uses the hatred of the beast to do away with the spirit of evil that rules the world. In verse 18, the angel who is making this exclamation offers John some clues to the identity of the prostitute. The angel says that she is a great city who has ruled over the kings on the earth. In John's culture, this certainly would have been taken as a reference to Rome in regards to the end time. It can be seen as a organized but false world religion, or simply as a reference to organized humanity yet outside of the law of God. Chapter 18 records the destruction of Babylon. There are similarities here with the Old Testament account of the destruction of Tyre, Ezekiel 26:28, and with the destruction of an actual city of Babylon, Jeremiah 50 and 51. When Babylon is destroyed, the entire infrastructure of humanity will be destroyed. This will create an undoing of the world that will leave humans hopeless. For John's original readers, this prophecy would have held some significance regarding the Roman Empire, but it is also the picture of all human civilizations that focus on earthly accomplishments rather than the power of the Creator. The angel describes Babylon 4 ways: in the home of the demons and unclean birds. The unclean birds were probably scavengers like buzzards that preyed on dead things. This was despicable to the Jews. It was also an apt image of a deserted place. And it is a source for all of the evil in the world. This is pictured by the nation drinking the wine of Babylon's immorality, 18:3. It is the source for all of the wicked leadership in the world. Thus, the image of the kings committing adultery with her. It is a source for all of the ill-gotten gain in the world. This can be seen by the mention of the merchants making their profits from Babylon's lavish wickedness. In verse 4, there is a shift in the tense of the passage. Chapter 18 opens with the proclamation of Babylon's destruction as a complete event. Verse 4, the voice from heaven sends out an address while Babylon is still in the process of being destroyed. The warning is to stay away from the city because it is already condemned. In verse 4 and 5 are addressed the people of God. Verse 6 and 8 seems to be addressing those whom can inflict justice. They are a request for punishment, not simply according to the amount Babylon has inflicted pain, but double that. They are a request for punishment, not simply according to the amount that Babylon has inflicted pain, but double that. In fact, the punishment this voice is calling for is not according to Babylon's cultures, but according to her demands for luxury, as extravagant as she has lived, so let her punishment be. Babylon claims not to be a widower and not to have to mourn any reflect that the nation's arrogance and demands for profitable times, she seems to believe that no power can take away the extravagance which she lives. Babylon is a diva of a nation, looking down on all others. According to verse 8, her due punishment will come all at one time through 4 plagues: death, mourning, famine, and fire. While no one runs to Babylon's rescue, according to verse 9-11, there are some who mourn her passing, those who profited from her trade. The kings who traded with her stand at a distance and verbalize their lament over her quick 1-hour demise, 18 and 10. Verse 11, the merchants join the lamentation for the simple reason that Babylon is not there to buy their cargoes any longer. Verse 12, 13, lest the kings of merchandise that made up that cargo, most are easily recognizable still today. The precious stone that could denote stones such as granite, and as well as what we consider precious stones today. The color of the cloth, scarlet and purple, are both colors the Scripture associates with splendor, even royalty, and also with sin. Creepwood is a hardwood well known for its deep grain. The mention of bodies donated slaves that we could refer to today as human trafficking. Verse 14 caps off this list of cargoes with a parenthetical announcement, addressing the destroyed city directly and addressing a general description of the splendor lost. The section closes with more mourning of the merchants, but includes more specifically the sea merchants who lost their overseas business, 1815-19. Their lament echoes the previous lament in the description of the city and as lavish, and their sorrow for the loss of profit. The economic foundation of their existence has been destroyed. Verse 20. In another parenthetical address, this case perhaps by John himself sees also verse 14. This statement addresses the saints, the apostles, the prophet, attributing this great act of judgment to God. It is called to rejoice. John's vision in verse 21 involves the angel who picks up a millstone and throws it into the sea. This image is reminiscent of the Old Testament prophet Jeremiah action in Jeremiah 51:63, which are also a picture of the destruction of Babylon. This typical millstone in that day was 4 to 5 feet in diameters and a couple of feet thickness. It would have been quite heavy and would have sunk instantly when thrown into the water. In other words, it would seem to disappear. That's what happened to Babylon. It disappeared. That is an apt description of the sudden destruction of Babylon. The entire system of the world would be done away with in an instant. When the millstone is thrown down, it is done with violence. The judgment comes as an intense and destructive moment that changes the foundation of life forever. Verse 22 and 23. List the things that will never happen again in light of Babylon's destruction. Musicians won't play. craftsmen won't practice. And everyday life, like grinding grain into flour, marrying, and even lamp lighting homes will cease. While the previous verses were addressing Babylon, verse 24 is a statement about Babylon, much like verse 20. The death of prophets and saints and all those killed on earth has been attributed to her. In light of such a broad scope of destruction being credited by Babylon, many believe that the destruction represents not just the destruction of one city or power, but a representation of all the world's city that has chosen to operate outside of God's law. We close here. We know that we will die. That is a must. We step from death to life. Do you die for God or the beast? Do you live for God or the beast? To live for the beast is to accept his mark or his name and the system he is. People, quit playing games with chips and cards or chips under your skin. Live for Satan. That is all it will take. And you already have the name or the mark. See Acts 2 and 21, Romans 10 and 13. Call on the name of the Lord and be saved. Thank you for watching. Till next time.